We shouldn't do that. Anandan from Asia Leads Partnership, and we are organizing this webinar in partnership with Chinese Taipei and the Institute from Taiwan. So before we move on, just a very high-level glimpse of what this energy preliminary management framework is about. So this is a cornerstone initiative from Chinese Taipei, designed to ensure the balance and stability of domestic energy demand and supply. So this tool represents a critical step forward in managing large-scale energy consumption efficiently. So under EPM, any domestic massive investment or protection plans that establish or expand energy consuming facilities beyond a certain threshold limit that needs approval, so that right from the beginning, the energy facility can follow the optimum energy use procedures. So that's all governed by this EPM procedure. So we are fortunate to have experts from Chinese Taipei today to share their experiences on this EPM, and they will share further details about that. So before we move into that, we will quickly go into the very high level information about the Asia Leads partnership. Then we'll hand it over to the expert speaker. Next slide, please. So this is the agenda for today. We'll give a very broad overview of Asia Leads partnership and its activities. And then we have this expert speaker, Dr. Yushen Liu from Taiwan Institute of Economic Research. Then we will have an open discussion on this topic. Participants can ask their questions directly as well. Then we'll close the session with final remarks. The next slide, please. So before we go into the presentation by the expert speaker, we would like to give a very high-level overview about the Asia Leads partnership. This session is organized by Asia Leads Partnership. It's one of the three regional platforms of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which holds this GCAP, Global Climate Action Partnership. So in Asia region, ALP supports advancing NDCs. Also, we support in low emission development, long-term strategies, etc. And we have been associating with Chinese Taipei, including Chinese Taipei, other Asian partners as well in promoting the climate change activities. So we basically operate through a lot of communities of practice. So communities of practice is something like we bring national, subnational government practitioners, whoever is working in a particular topic. And based on the needs of the countries in the Asia region, we frame activities, capacity building activities that supports the needs of the countries. So there are several such communities of practice we have been running. So that has been shown here, like energy, finance, subnational integration, clean mobility, building energy efficiency, etc. So as part of this, we also act as an accelerator. If some good case is happening in a country, in a region, we help to leverage and pass it on to other countries and accelerate the benefit. So this specific webinar is also organized in with that objective of sharing the lessons from one region to the other regions. Next slide, please. So these are some of the other flagship initiatives of the Asia Leads partnership. So this is called Leadership Group for Clean Transport in Asia. So we have brought together around 10 countries in Asia region, and we are supporting them in rising ambition, and also support in submitting revised NDCs next year, and also trying to assess the gaps in achieving their climate change targets, especially in transport sector, and trying to support them. Next one, please. So as part of this initiative, we also provide a lot of technical trainings that supports the countries in understanding the nitty-gritties of the topics, and if there is any gap, accordingly we cater to the needs of the countries and organize this capacity building. And we also do a lot of site visits, etc. So basically, we share knowledge between members, peer members, and help them to take forward their climate change goals. So this is in a nutshell what Asia Leads Partnership does. Next slide, please. So we also supporting Philippines in specific technical support we are offering in the energy sector. There's an island, Palawan, in Philippines. We are supporting the island to transition to renewable energy. So we have been supporting with the modeling exercises and also to study the power plants, etc. So this is just to give a glimpse of the activities by Asia Leads Partnership. Next slide, please. We will directly go into the session, but we'll give the housekeeping rules for today. For mostly the participants will be in mute mode. There are ways you can send the questions during the discussion, open discussion. You can directly ask questions to the speakers. If you want to interact with the speaker, you can click the raise the hand icon and we will unmute you. Also, you can please feel free to send your questions using Q&A box at any point during the session. And if you have any other technical glitches, please feel free to text us. Next slide. Without further ado, we would like to invite Dr. Yushen Liu, who is the Deputy Group Leader in Taiwan Institute of Economic Research. He has expertise in the field of energy preliminary management, energy security, transportation policy, LNG policy, etc. Also, he holds the doctorate in economics. We are very much pleased to have you, Dr. Liu. Over to you for sharing the insights on the EPM framework.
Thank you. Thank you. So good day. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Liu from Taiwan Institute of Economic Research, Research Division 5. And I'm very honored to have this privilege to share with member economies and participants of ALP about one particular best practice of Chinese Taipei's energy policy, which is quite a unique policy tool that enhances industrial energy efficiency in Chinese Taipei. That is sorry. Can you see me now? Can you see the slides? Yeah.
Yes, Dr. We could hear you. Please go on.
Okay, thank you. So as International Energy Agency puts it, the IEA puts it, energy efficiency is the so-called first fuel, as it provides some of the quickest and most cost-effective CO2 mitigation options while lowering energy costs and strengthening energy security. To some, measures to improve energy efficiency might seem like a drop in the bucket and too small to make any difference. That said, small contributions could still be incremental and eventually making huge differences in clean energy transitions, energy saving, and carbon reduction. So, next slide, please. Yes, this is the content of my following presentation. So please take a look for your reference. Next slide, please. So from this first page, yeah, thank you. I would like to introduce this EPM with a visual framework. So the EPM regulates large investment projects such as semiconductor manufacturing plant or power plants in Chinese Taipei to consider adapting energy efficiency techniques as early as in the design and planning stage, so to improve overall energy efficiency. And you can see from this triangular structure, it is a cooperative framework, involves at least 3 types of stakeholders. At the bottom left is the energy users. So before the facilities being built, the energy users need to submit energy utilization manual, that's how we call it, which is basically a checklist that's about like 200 pages that allows users to explain how they plan to adapt best available technique. And the second stakeholder is the energy administration, so on the top, which is the competent authority. They need to call upon an advisory group meeting once they receive the submission of the manual. And we think the advisory group meeting, which is the third stakeholder start playing the role, is the subject matter experts. So experts about energy saving, experts concerning manufacturing techniques, they will participate as advisory committee and provide advices of possible corrections or improvement. And the manuals will need to be amended or corrected in accordance with the meeting's decision. And the proof manual will be then regarded as a legal promise that need to be fulfilled by the energy users in the later stage. And as far as we are concerned, it is a policy tool that is not so often observed elsewhere. In fact, according to our research, probably only South Korea and Singapore have similar mechanisms. That said, in their respective mechanisms, neither of these two countries has reached the same level of legal enforceability as in Chinese Taipei. And just like some might ask, why does Chinese Taipei do it so early in the design stage? And according to the result that we found from an EU's pilot research program, it shows that to adopt energy efficiency designs during the planning and design phase can lead to a total energy consumption saving as much as 20% to 30% more, as opposed to do so after the facility in commercial operation phase. So simply put it, it is easier and more beneficial to do it earlier than to do it later. It's actually quite intuitive and very straightforward. So if you do it earlier, you don't have to remove existing facilities. And removing facilities actually involve extra cost. And when doing so, one tends to try to avoid damaging or causing further shutdown for existing manufacturing process. So your choices of energy efficiency actually is quite limited and facing a lot of more constraint. So that we can simply conclude that it is easier to do it earlier than do it later. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. So this is the scope and eligibility for the 4 types of EPN's users. So for Chinese Taipei's EPN, basically the energy users could be classified into 4 types. In short, 2 of them are the electricity generation and the cogeneration system. They are energy suppliers. They transform fossil fuels into electricity. And the other 2 types are in the demand side. And the 4 of them all have different or similar threshold value of energy consumption that to be qualified as EPN users respectively. And next slide, please. So yes, yeah, that one, thank you. So for the process and review of the EPN, this is what we have here is a simple visualization of the process. So in short, it could further break down into 3 stages. So for the first stage is the ex ante phase. So the consultation assistance that will be provided by the EA, including writing samples, draft examination services, and improvement advices, and users could follow their suggestions and complete the manual draft before they submit to the EA. And the second phase is the interim phase. So the advisory group meeting. And it is actually normally an in-person meeting. It's conducted in a vis-a-vis basis. And as mentioned, the manual is basically a checklist containing at least 122 items of best available techniques. So the meeting just goes through these techniques that we'll call it BAT, each of them one by one, and making sure the users are trying their best, having thorough consideration to adapt the BATs. Sometimes the experts will give them extra advices to improve them. So that's what it is. Now, for the third phase is the export phase. So once the manual being approved, the facility can then be built and become in commercial operation. And once they've done so, the EA will gather a group of experts to conduct on-site audit. So they actually pay a visit to the facility, making sure that the energy user actually following the manual and fulfilling their promises. So this is what it is. So please take to the next page, please. Thank you. So some might ask, what is the best available techniques, the BATs? I actually mentioned it a couple of times. And it is the most effective and advanced, yet commercially and technologically feasible techniques for approaches of energy efficiency. And for Chinese Taipei's EPN, at the beginning, we introduced a large set of BAT references from the EU, also known as the BREFs or BREFs, as standards. But as time being, Chinese Taipei also is working on updating energy efficiency BAT standards and the localization of it. So in short, we're trying to coming up with our own version of BATs, which is following Chinese Taipei's industry conventions, our local technologies developing trends, and our geographic characteristics. So next slide, please. So for the past 8 years, the EPA has examined and approved a total of 51 cases. And also we have updated and localized best feasible technology standards for public utilities, for manufacturing process, for industries such as semiconductor, steel, and specialty gas. Furthermore, while updating the efficiency standard, we also introduced international energy efficiency guidelines for semiconductors. In this case, we believe we have not only been helpful in the energy efficiency for semiconductor, but also helping them to decrease related expenses such as carbon taxes, and assisting our semiconductor industry in Chinese Taipei to become an international benchmark for energy efficiency in the global supply chain, therefore enhancing our competitiveness. And it has been observed quite often that for energy security concern, some energy users tend to overestimate their energy demand. But with EPN, we sometimes could help suppress their excessive electricity usage implication by examining their plans. And lastly, for the past 8 years, the EPN was conducted in a paper-based manner. We're also trying to digitalize the process, so not to only reduce the paper usage, but also try to enhance the reviews efficiency, try to shorten the days of review. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here are some examples of how the EPN actually help. So let me start with this example. So the motors. So the motors seemingly not an advanced technology, but the energy efficiency of motors is actually quite crucial, especially for factories of specialty gases, which in Chinese Taipei tend to be built next to a semiconductor factory, which is because in the manufacturing process of semiconductor, they need specialty gases such as helium or nitrous, oxide. They need this kind of specialty gas provision 24/7. And the demand is increasing. So they tend to build the factory next to a semiconductor manufacturer factory. And in the process, the motor actually play a very important role because the air compressor, which is involved in the air separation process for the specialty gas, they need to work for 24/7. So actually the process in the gas industry, even though very simple, but the electricity cost actually comes a lot from the motor, up to 70% of the total production cost. So adopting high efficiency equipment can significantly reduce power consumption, lowering production costs and contributing to carbon emission. And through our EPN, now it is required to adopt motor of premium efficiency, the IE3. We call it IE3. So the IE3 is our premium efficiency. And in this particular case that I raised in this slide, which joins EPN, the experts are suggesting to use motors of premium efficiency. It can save approximately more than 4,000 megawatt per hour of electricity for every year, and which is equivalent to reducing carbon emission by more than 2,000 tons. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so this is for the chillers. So another example is to use chillers with high efficiency in clean room of semiconductor manufacturing process. So as we can all understand and agree, to produce wafer of top-notch standard, it requires precise control in maintaining temperature, humidity, and cleanliness of the air. So in that case, chiller units can be one of the most energy consuming component. It is very important and very, very much energy consuming. So among many EPN cases, we pick one example that follows advices of the experts in our framework, and they successfully adapt chillers with high efficiency. And by our estimate, it could save for more than 8,000 megawatt per hour for every year and reduce more than 4,000 tons of carbon emissions. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. Yes. And our last example for our EPN's effort is the cold dry quenching of the steel industry. So for the past years, we have a couple of steel industry projects joining the EPN. And one of the plants, they try to use the CDQ, the coke dry quenching, which is to quench the coke that required for blast furnace. Instead of using water in the traditional way, it proposed to recycle the waste heat of hot coke with air circulation and produce electricity with the heat. And it is estimated to produce electricity as much as 273,000 megawatt per year. So that's actually quite a lot. They generate their own electricity for the facility to use. And they could decrease the CO2 emission by not using electricity from Taipower. They just use their electricity their own. So they actually could decrease quite a lot of CO2 emission by about 14,000 tons of carbon emission. So that's the examples I want to raise. So next slide, please. And from these examples, we can see that through EPN, it is not necessarily require the most advanced technology, and it tends to be something small, like I just mentioned, the motor chiller. But just like the title of this presentation, at the end of the day, it is often the little things that could improve. And with enough little things that the factory make effort here and there, it can be accumulated and incremental, and could be saving thousands of megawatt per hour of electricity consumption and reducing carbon emission by a couple of thousand tons. And though the introduction of more energy efficient equipment sometimes can be very costly, but saving energy could also represent saving millions of Taiwanese dollars annually. So the user tend to be incentivized to choose the BATs to follow our operations. And to recap shortly, the EPN effectively monitored the domestic energy supply and demand and enhance industrial energy efficiency. And being developed through years of coordination and communication with stakeholders, it received widespread recognitions within Chinese Taipei. Lastly, the EPN can guide industries in optimizing energy, reducing subsequent energy cost expenditures, and carbon emissions, while Chinese Taipei could therefore enhance its international competitiveness within the global supply chain. So that's my presentation today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liu, for the insights on this EPN management. Can you turn on the video if that's okay with you?
Oh, I cannot turn on my video.
Turn on your video.
I cannot.
Okay. All right, Dr. Leo, that's perfectly fine.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. We invite the participants to raise any questions if we have. You can either post it in the Q&A or chat box, or you can raise the, you can click the raise the hand icon and we'll unmute you. You can ask your questions. So we have a few questions to you, Dr. Liu. The first one, if the member countries want to implement EPM in their own countries, so what are the possible, where do they start with? And also, could you please share some experiences on challenges that they may face and how do they overcome based on your experiences? Could you share some insights?
Thank you. Thank you. That's an excellent question. Thank you very much. So I will just share my 2 cents here. So for energy users, participating into a newly established energy management policy mechanism often entails additional compliance costs. So they don't have to do it before. If they've been facing a new regulation, they feel extra cost they need to follow if once they choose to follow. So they'll find obstacle. Therefore, before implementation, in Chinese Taipei's experience, the government needs to engage in deep communication with industry, with academia to establish consensus before execution. So that's the first part. You need to discuss quite in-depth discussion with academia, with industry, with stakeholders, of course. And additionally, for member economies with larger territories, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, or Mongolia, their territory are quite larger as opposed to Chinese Taipei, as opposed to Taiwan. In their cases, I could only assume that they might have facing different local energy management regulations at provincial, or state level. And these differences might present issues of jurisdictional division and regulatory conflict. So in short, different places within the same country, within the same economy, might have different regulations. And this kind of gap or differentiation also need to be addressed properly through intergovernmental discussion, so to reach consensus before moving forward. And therefore, you can reach harmonization among regulations, and therefore you can conduct a sort of pertinent collaboration. So that's my short answer to your good question. Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Liu. And yeah, we have other questions to you. So, what we see that you follow EU BREF as EPM's efficiency standard. Is there any particular reason or any advantages of it?
Yeah, because EU, the best practice of best available technique reference document, as I just introduced, we call it EU's BREF or EU's BREF. They have done it quite early I think it's as early as in the 80s or 90s. And they have done it in a very systematically established way. And they include practical implementation cases so that they could serve as the basis for investment approvals in the EU member state. And they, in certain EU member states, as I can recall, they are adopted as the efficiency review benchmark. So they are not just references. In some countries of the Europe, they are regulations. And so we sort of adapt these kind of characteristics because they are systematically established for different industries. And they are, of course, a large part of it are for the try to reduce emission, try to reduce waste. But a good portion of it is about energy efficiency. So we adapt that part and take it into account of the characteristics of our domestic industries and ensuring both objectivity and flexibility in the implementation standards in Chinese Taipei. So in short, they are systematically established, they are well classified, and so that we could adapt from the EU. So actually, that's what I would suggest to member economies who who want to sort of conduct EPM of their own. You could also, search for EU's BREF as the starting point for your own reference. Before you could conduct your local research, domestic research, or you coming up with your own version of your local BREFs. So you could start with the EU as your reference first, and then you could come up with your own version. So that's my answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. I think it's better to start with somewhere the best available standard, then they can go for their own standards as per their needs. So also in many of the implementation, we also see a lot of challenges in other areas, such as the willingness of stakeholders to cooperate and to, the willingness to implement. So how do you address those challenges in terms of stakeholder engagements and then convincing them to implement, or is it mandatory for an industry of a certain threshold to follow it, or how much effort is being made in implementing and also penalizing, or that part? Can you give some insight?
Sure. So I will answer your questions in two parts. First of all, the willingness. So actually, in Taiwan's, in Chinese Taipei's case, we didn't find our energy users unwilling to follow EPM. Quite differently, in the context of global trend toward net zero carbon emissions, Chinese Taipei's energy-intensive industries tend to face domestic carbon fees as much as the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism, for instance, the CBAM. So they need to they need to pay more basically during the manufacturing process if they produce more carbon emission. So it is for them necessary to continuously improve energy efficiency, and in that sense, they are willing to try to reduce their energy efficiency, try to improve their energy efficiency, therefore reduce their carbon emission. So that in that sense, they are willing to follow. Also, in Chinese Taipei's case, our energy prices are probably are not that high. It's not high enough to become an incentive for them to save energy. Actually, it was considerably or relatively low compared to international levels. So it makes it kind of difficult for them to promote energy efficiency through market mechanisms. So the EPM actually provides a really good mechanism for manufacturers to improve their energy efficiency. And according to some participating users, they share with us that they could utilize the EPM to sort of discuss with their equipment suppliers. So before they don't really have any say in choosing the equipment, because the equipment is all sort of being made by suppliers, and they cannot customize their equipment efficiency. But now some of our users tend to share that, okay, we utilize the EPM, and EPM is now the law, the regulation. Now they could utilize the law to sort of ask their supplier to cooperate or to work on a better energy efficiency plan for their facility or the equipment. So actually, it's very beneficial for their energy efficiency for their plants. And as for the penalties, to be perfectly honest with you, we have now 51 cases, and I think almost 15 cases has been in commercial operations, and not one of them has been penalized. So that basically they follow their regulations. They're quite behaved. They're good. They're good companies. They're good. They're quite cooperative. So they didn't get penalized. And we will try to help them to improve energy efficiency will provide them with feasible suggestions. So our suggestions, the EPN suggestions by the expert, by the government, is feasible. They are not crazy ideas that cannot be done. So they are feasible suggestions, and EPN users tend to be following these suggestions quite happily. So for the past 8 years, for the past 51 cases, none of them being penalized. So overall, to answer the question, I think the willingness or the sort of the consensus among Taiwanese, Chinese Taipei's industry is quite harmonized. People in unified vacation, they think, okay, this is a good mechanism, this is a good framework, we can follow it properly. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Sure. That's very interesting and very good to hear that, Dr. Liu, because in most of the cases, companies find it very difficult to follow. But rather than only giving the guidelines, when we also give the financial support, much needed technical support, and also making them understand why this is important for them. Not as a regulation, but they also see value in it. So that is a great motivation. And I think that's how many policies have to be implemented, I suppose. Yeah, thank you for that great insight. There was another question that I think you also answered to that. There was a question on will EPM hinder corporations' willingness to invest? I think you already answered that. So as they see value, so they come forward to invest, we suppose. Yeah.
Indeed.
So we would like to invite participants. If you have any further questions, please feel free to post it in the Q&A box, or you can inform us. We'll unmute you. And one more question we had, Dr. Liu. Have you ever tried for carbon credits, or how much feasible is it for you to apply for it, or is it eligible to apply for it?
Oh, for the carbon credits. Yeah. So in this EPN, because you can see that in this EPN, this is done in the preliminary stage. So I believe in Taiwan, in Chinese Taipei case, you don't do it after you've been like commercially operations. So we help them to plan it, but we didn't like it's not really like well hooked, the two mechanisms of carbon credit. But this is like as in my presentation shows that we can only estimate how much carbon can be reduced, carbon emission can be reduced, but it doesn't really like directly hook. But we believe it is beneficial, and this is actually also being agreed by the energy users, even though the two mechanisms, the two framework are not like directly connected. Yeah.
All right, sure. Thank you, Dr. Liu. There are two other interesting questions we have. One, on the financing part, how does the government support financing? There could be many small players who are not able to purchase efficient and costly equipments. So how do you support from government side? That is one part of the question. Second question, how do you interact with other countries for technologies? How do you bring it to your country, and how do you support the industry?
Okay, so I try to answer the first question first. Okay, so the first question I think is for the small, like medium small business, and this is actually because as you can see on my presentation, the EPN only like because we try to conduct this sort of mechanism in the early stage, in the design and in the early stage. So we have this threshold because we're only targeting the large production plants. So in our cases, it's more than 25 megawatt, and because that's where the benefits are. Because this threshold is quite meaningful because we can only for each year probably we only conduct like 6 or 7 cases for each year. but we can sort of making sure that at least 70 to 80% of the electricity application is being monitored and well examined. So this is like a quite cost-effective approach in terms of management. So the EPN only focusing on large-scale production plants. As for the medium or small cases, the Chinese Taipei use like we have this on-site auditing, or they need to sort of like doing I don't know the proper name in English, but they have to sort of doing an annual review of their energy saving process, and they need to provide a energy saving plan. So they have to the government actually help them in terms of this I call it ex post audit. They help them to sort of making sure that you are actually following your plan for the small scale production plants, for instance. The threshold is quite low. It's actually 0.8 megawatt. So it's actually quite small compared to our EPN users. And also, the government has this what we call ESCO, the energy saving companies. They try to make it becoming an industry, try to make it market, try to make it becoming a booming market, trying to make using the market power to help the small energy users to conduct energy saving techniques. So a lot of government, I would say a lot, quite amount of energy, quite an amount of government's budget actually are poured into the we call it ESCO. This is something in the focus in Taiwan, in Chinese Taipei case, we just have a new president, and our new president actually sort of put extra emphasis on this what we call ESCO. So the ESCO, the ESCO actually will be beneficial for them. So that's I think that answers your first question. I sort of forgot what the second question is.
So the second question is about the technology transfer from other countries.
Yeah. Okay, actually, I just have this one good example that I just recently encountered, because in Taiwanese case, this is the EPN actually is for local companies, for instance, semiconductor factories or specialty gas factory or chemical factory, for instance. But sometimes their suppliers, they are using, for instance, from overseas, they have suppliers from Japan, suppliers from South Korea, and they have experts. They have new or quite novel technologies for energy saving from these overseas countries. So I wouldn't say Taiwan is the best economy for energy saving technology. Sometimes we can just learn from different economies. And in this case, I couldn't say that, I couldn't name it, I couldn't give the name, but they're actually using AI technique to monitor energy equipment operation. And they could use AI to sort of come up with diagnosis of what can be done better or what's wrong with your operation on I think it's real-time basis. So they're using AI, they remotely monitoring it in a real-time basis. That's quite new for us. And I think that's a good example for your question, because basically we're introducing new technology from the different economies. And I think another way is maybe we could export our technology to other maybe developing economies. So in this sense, Taiwan has a lot of strong manufacturers, and they're actually planning to invest in maybe Southeast Asia countries, including maybe Malaysia, Thailand, or Vietnam, for instance. I couldn't give you detailed places, but I think there are potentials. So they'll bring their technology, which is quite mature at home, to the overseas manufacturing plants. So I think that's how we sort of export our energy efficiency technique overseas, and therefore bringing the whole Asia Pacific region energy efficiency up. I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, that's helpful, Dr. Liu. I think those are the questions we had. Yeah, if there are no further questions, maybe we'll go on to next slide to the closing remarks. Yeah. So the participants, we'll share the slide deck and recording with you. If you have any further questions, please feel free to write to ALP Secretariat, and we'll also share the membership form if any of us want to stay connected with Asia Lit's partnership to know about the updates, what's happening in the region, and also if any country representatives are there, you can take help on any of the sectoral topics such as energy, transport, climate finance, etc. You can reach out to us. And on behalf of Asia Lit's partnership, we would like to thank Dr. Liu immensely, and also Ministry of Economic Affairs, Chinese Taipei, for the contribution and organizing this webinar along with Asia Lit's partnership. Do you have any final words, Dr. Liu, before we close?
No, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.